I do a wide variety of things. I would say the thing that we're the most known for is our signature cheesecakes because my brain does some fun things with flavors.
Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Hurrdat Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and my guest today has been feeding Omaha some tremendous pies, cheesecakes, cakes, other goodies since 2020. But recently, she took the plunge. She is doing it full time now, quit her job, and cakes and cheesecakes are her passion, her profession. This is Brie White of Brie's in Bellevue. Brie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited that you are here because we get to talk about sweets. And after having several of your confections at Battle of the Chefs, I was just like, I need to have this person on the podcast. I need to know more about this. So if somebody's listening or watching and they're hearing about Brie's for the first time, how would you describe the concept?
So I do a wide variety of things. I would say the thing that we're the most known for is our signature cheesecakes because my brain does some fun things with flavors and different things. But I would say the the premise of where I started the business and where I'm at now is a little bit different. Just in the sense that we've evolved so much. And now I get to locally source the vast majority of my ingredients that I use for the dessert. So that means that I've got lots of great relationships with people around the city and do lots of collaborations and things like that. So while we do a variety of desserts, I try to do them with as many local ingredients as I possibly can. So that's what's so fulfilling for me about it, and one of the main reasons I love doing it. So
And we will get into so much of what you just talked about. But before we do, I want to give it to the people. Like, if they're listening to this and they're like, shoot, I need to try one of these cheesecakes or, one of these brownies, whatever it is, where can they find your products? How can they get their hands on them?
So we are in a variety of places and have different options for pickup and delivery, which I do all around the metro area. So lucky for everybody here, I can just come and deliver your stuff to you. But we have a few different vendors, one in Bellevue, Dip Cravers, one out in Waterloo, Nebraska, Ellsworth Crossing, and then Wenninghoff Farms in Omaha. And then we have a couple of different vendors that we do different pop-ups and things with, which I can talk about, throughout the course of this podcast. But I think you'll probably notice a theme with all those too. I am at the Bellevue Farmers Market every Saturday in Washington Park from 8 a.m. until noon, as well as just different kind of events around Omaha. You can order on my website at breezebellevue.com, and you can choose pickup in Council Bluffs or Bellevue and or delivery. So lots of places.
So many options.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we mentioned you do more than cheesecake, but cheesecake is the signature. How did that become your signature dessert?
So it's kind of a funny story. I had kind of put out there in Thanksgiving of 2020, like people had reached out to me and said, hey, we're having trouble finding, desserts and stuff like that for Thanksgiving. Do you think you could make something like some sort of pie or whatever? And I said, yeah, I think I could figure it out anyways, with the experience that I had. But
and to be clear, people are reaching out to you because you have a career in culinary.
Yes.
You worked 11 years for Guggenheimer ISS.
Yes.
So they're not just randomly reaching out being like, hey, person, make me a cheesecake.
No.
But they knew this person knows food.
Yes, I did. I had a lot of experience at that point, and I've made, so many things for different events and things to do. I'm not a sedentary person, so I've got lots of different places that I go and like to bring things because food makes people happy, and that makes me happy. So, but funny enough, he was new boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, he loved cheesecake, like loved it. It's his favorite dessert. And I had no idea. I'd never made one before in my whole life.
Really?
So, yeah. So we're starting from nothing. I'm like, well, I mean, I could put this on the menu. it would give me practice, to make a great cheesecake for him, but then also to actually learn how to do it, because that's one of the things I love about culinary the most is challenging myself and continuously learning, because the baking portion of my culinary journey is completely self-taught. So that part has been really cool to evolve, because let me tell you, the first cheesecake, it's it's nothing like what I'm making now, but I would say the reason that I started doing it was primarily for him, so he gets to benefit from that now all the time. So
Okay, so take me back to that first cheesecake. Like when you made it, were you pretty proud of it? And like now you can look back and be like, "Whew, that was rookie level stuff." Or even then, were you like, okay, this isn't great, but there's a bones for something here, and I'm excited about how I can continue to learn about this.
yeah, I think with really anything, you don't know what you don't know. And so I knew there were like some very general guidelines, but I knew that I didn't want to have like a super dense New York style cheesecake. I knew that I wanted to have not just your classic everyday flavors, because quite frankly, you can get those in the grocery store for not a lot of money, which a lot of people like that. They love their classic traditional flavors, which is awesome. But when I pulled the first, I'm not gonna lie to you, I pulled the first one out of the oven. I was like, man, this thing's got like 4 cracks in it, and it looks, maybe I baked it too long. I had no idea. You're learning as you go. Looking back on it, I'm I'm so happy that I started instead of just being like, no, this is probably a little bit too difficult for me. I'll do something else that maybe I'm a little bit more comfortable with, because I have grown so much in my chosen career path. Obviously, leaving my company to run this full time, I guess people like it, which is very exciting for me. But the learned experience as you go, you you don't learn if you do everything perfect the first time. So I'm 1,000% down to make 1,000 mistakes, because it means I'm going to learn something from every single one of those mistakes. And now here we are. I still make mistakes, but the cheesecakes are way better. So
Well, I'm totally going to butcher this, and I'm stealing the quote from someone else, but I've heard it said, and I agree with this. You learn more from your mistakes and your failures than you do your successes. As your like, how do you balance those things? Because I know with anything, but especially in food and baking, like especially because it's such a science and you have to get your measurements, just so, and things can be affected. Even the smallest change in weather, temperature, humidity, anything like that can really change like how something turns out. What's that balance between, you know, pushing for more and like getting frustrated that it isn't perfect, but also learning from those mistakes and like kind of embracing them and saying these mistakes are good for me, but not like accepting them and still wanting to push for more. Does that question make any
yeah,
sense?
it totally does.
Okay.
So I'm thankful for my prior experience with savory cooking, because I think it helped so much with pivoting.
Interesting.
Because when something doesn't turn out the way that you want it to with savory cooking, you can kind of fix things a little bit easier, unless you totally burn it and then it's botched and then you got to start all over, and that's fine. But you're constant, like, in when you think about it, when you're making a dish, you're constantly pivoting to do different things to make it out to be what you want. It was quick there. Maybe the experience with baking, the pivoting can't be quite as quick, because you don't know that a cupcake's gonna be completely deflated and not what you want it to be until you pull it out of the oven.
Hmm.
But I don't have a desire for perfection, which probably helps me, because I know that it can drive some people totally crazy, but I do obviously have high standards for myself. But I look at that and I go, "We can figure this out." Like, I need to sit down and maybe change a couple of things, or maybe bake it longer or less time or whatever, because I know that there's some variance in there that I'm just not doing correctly, but I like the challenge. So the pivoting may take a little bit longer, but I guess to me the mistakes don't matter so long as I don't give up and I continue to be determined for, to resolve in the final outcome, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely does. And I think, that kind of speaks into, you said it, you're self-taught. Like, you have to know that you're not going to be perfect if you're teaching yourself. What did self-taught look like for you? Is that cookbooks, YouTube videos, reaching out to bakers? Like, how did you basically level up your baking game?
So for me, initially, it was trying to figure out what I wanted my base cheesecake recipe to be because all of the ones that I was trying, I didn't like. And that was challenging for me because I'm a very passionate person. I didn't want to put something out there that I myself was not passionate about. So I think the ebbs and flows of this was that I had enough intuition to kind of figure out why I didn't like the thing, whether it was flavor or texture or whatever the case may be, from prior experience, and then obviously having a lot of cheesecake and figuring out which ones you liked more than others to finally land on that base recipe, and then taking the cheesecakes, continuing to evolve them so I would get more confidence in my flavors. Because okay, we have this base recipe. Now how much liquid can I add to it? How much of a solid ingredient can I add to it to keep the texture pretty much the same? So I played that game for a while, and that was great. And then, you know, after I kind of had that where I wanted it, then I moved on to my pie crust. All right, how can we make my pie crust better? Like, yeah, I've been using this base recipe, but like, how can I make it something that I'm super, super proud of? How can I make my fruit pies and all that? If it's not different, or if I'm not offering something that's a little bit different than other people, then why would you? There's a million kinds of pie, right? A lot of people are making pie. So I wanted mine to stand out because the reality is people can choose. Food is subjective, but you got to have it, right? So if you go out, you've got 10 different kinds of pie, one of them's going to be your favorite. For me, because I had the experience and I wanted to be, you know, I guess confident in what I was putting out there, I had to love it, right? Because if I didn't love it, why would anybody else like have the confidence in me to get it, to have it? So I guess that's where I continue to evolve was just I got to make it better. I got to make it better for me and then for everybody else cuz that's what they deserve too. So
And I love that you've mentioned, I had to find a way to offer some different things because if somebody checks out and you currently or not currently, constantly rotate your flavors. I mean,
yeah,
you're offering different things each weekend at the farmers market on your website. But I mean, if somebody wants just like a chocolate cheesecake or a turtle cheesecake or something, you offer that and you'll make
totally.
that. But I just went back through your Instagram, and this is just a minor description of some of the specials that you've had. But you've done specialties like cinnamon roll, chocolate. Of course, my computer decides to go to sleep. Chocolate peanut butter cup, Lucky Charms, s'mores, apricot, and like I said, that's just scratching the surface of some of the things that you've done. Where do you get the inspiration for these things? And like, like no one that I know would ever say this cinnamon roll is amazing. I wonder what it would taste like in cheesecake form. Like, where does that idea even come from?
It's just how my brain works. I don't if I'm constantly I love being creative, and I know that creativity, some people would say that it has its limits. With food, I find that it's all about what you make of it. Like it's only as limited as you think it is. I've got so much fun stuff planned for the rest of the summer too that's very different than what you would traditionally see around, but if it if I've ever had something that, "Oh, yeah, I have a sweet this has a sweet component to it. How could I incorporate this and make it a well-balanced dessert?" with maybe a sweet and a savory component. Or like a few weeks ago, I did a sweet corn cheesecake and it was awesome. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was awesome. But, people come up, oh, sweet, sweet corn cheesecake. Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever, I mean, it's in the name, right? Sweet corn. So you're just, I made a sweet corn puree and sieved it out and put it in cheesecake and it was delicious. But again, I think my prior experience mixed with the fact that I'm constantly pushing myself is just a real good mix for some really fun stuff. So, and I love food. That helps a lot. So, gives me a chance to kind of play around with things.
And I imagine for anyone, but especially getting to know you a little bit, there's some fun to having someone question it. Like what you just said.
Yeah.
Like if you have somebody walk up to your stand and they say, "Sweet corn cheesecake, how does that work?" I think like your personality takes that as a challenge and you're like, "Yeah, it's sweet corn cheesecake." You're
It
and you know what? You think it's weird? You're going to love it.
Yep.
And then they either come back the next weekend or you get a social media message or something from them and they're like, "This was so good." Like, does that add to your drive to continue creating new things?
It does because I feel like if I'm pushing my limits of creativity as a person that gets to exist in this really awesome culinary world that we have in Omaha, I want to push the limits of some of my customers too, because why not? If they come up and they see something that they haven't seen before and they're willing to give it a go, it gives me inspiration to keep doing that and keeps my determination going to continue to offer something that's different because then maybe after, a while, which I feel like I've pushed the limits of people in Bellevue and I love it. And I love them for it because they absolutely continue to come back and support me. And I love that. But every time I do that and it confirms it for them, then they inevitably have more confidence in me as a maker. So then when I put the weird flavors out there, they're gone first because people want to experience that and know that I have such a limited quantity. Like, oh, I get cherry cheesecake anytime, but like you made a rocky road pie this week. I mean, that was this last weekend at the market, and then they want to try the weird stuff first because why not?
So tell me about some more. I don't even want to call it weird because that makes it seem like weird has a connotation that it's not good. Maybe unusual
Oh
is
man,
is the word that we're looking for. Some
yeah.
unusual cheesecakes or pies that you are really proud of. You feel like you nailed that recipe and you're like, if somebody's skeptical about having a cheesecake from Bree's, I can serve them one of these and they're just going to be blown away.
So oh my gosh. So I have 3 cheesecakes that in my head goes to immediately. The first one is our most popular, which is the chocolate peanut butter cup. Now, that being said,
Classic
it
combination.
is. It's a classic combination, but also we do it really well and it's quite extravagant. It's very over the top. So I enjoy that because I think of all the things that I do, that cheesecake has quite honestly changed the most. So, because I started with it several years ago. The second is our monster
Oh
cookie.
wow, you are not kidding about it being extravagant. I'm looking at a picture of it right now.
Yeah, I mean it's piled high.
There's a mountain of Reese's on top of this. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I don't skimp on the good stuff.
I
You
like
can't.
that's one thing I like about you, Bree. Sorry, I interrupted you. Monster
No, that's
cookie.
okay. So monster cookie is probably our second most popular. So I bake like these super soft monster cookies. I incorporate them into the cheesecake and then on top of the cheesecake with chocolate ganache and all sorts of good stuff. People really like that. You don't see cookies really in cheesecake too terribly often. Um, and then, of course, I absolutely 1000% lost my train of thought on the third one. It really came to mind really quick, and then it left just as
Would
quickly.
it be on your website?
Oh, yes, it would. Yes, it would be on my
The
website, but
salted
that's
honey?
but that no, that's okay. I've already got it
Oh,
back
good.
in my not so it's which is ridiculous because it's my favorite flavor. So it's a butterscotch cheesecake with white chocolate ganache, and then I can a caramel and I drizzle that on top. So it's our butterscotch white chocolate caramel
Oh, yum.
cheesecake. I don't feel as though enough people offer the butterscotch, so I had to
You had to
satiate
go there?
that. So it's one of our biggest flavors. I always serve it for Thanksgiving, and it always just hits super hard because people are real excited for butterscotch. But again, you don't see that in a cheesecake around. You don't see butterscotch in a lot of desserts anymore.
You really
So
don't.
yeah.
So take me through your R&D process a little bit. So you're inspired. You have this idea for a certain cheesecake. You've got your base, the cake itself. You've got the crust, although I guess the crust could change with flavors as well.
Mhm.
What's the process between, okay, I've got this idea. Yes, I've decided I'm going to run with it, and this is available for customers now. And I'm sure that varies from cheesecake to cheesecake, but generally, what is that journey like?
It does. So I'll break down the sweet corn cheesecake and the process that I went through on that because I did actually start the R&D process on that last year and I never ended up being happy with it. So I wasn't willing to put it out for people. So I had had sweet corn ice cream for the first time at my favorite place in the whole world, which is the Iowa State Fair.
Oh, okay.
So, it's some of the best food that you're ever gonna get. But I had the sweet corn ice cream there several years ago, and I had thought about it during the summer when I had started working with Wenninghoff Farms. They do a lot of variations of sweet corn. I thought, "Oh my gosh, I could totally do a sweet corn in a cheesecake." But the problems that I was having with it, I didn't like the texture because I couldn't filter all the corn out. Um, Amongst other things, I did raw sweet corn puree versus a cooked sweet corn puree. And when I cooked it, you really lost a lot of that corn flavor, that sweet corn flavor that you had in it. And after baking it and trying it and baking it and trying it, usually for me, it's is the texture there, but is the flavor there? Because the flavor for me is the most important.
Of course, yeah.
If that's not there, then what are you doing? Why are you having a sweet corn cheesecake if you can't taste the corn? So I thought about it throughout the season, and then I came back this year when sweet corn became available again, and I had thought about it. I'd given myself some time to think about it, which again, for some of them is a couple weeks, and then for like this case was almost a year. I took the things that I really liked. So, okay, the raw sweet corn is where the flavor's at. How can I filter this out, get it into the cheesecake without it kind of turning into mush or whatever the issue was. But I'll list things out for myself as to what I liked and didn't like about them, which is usually a short list. Usually there's a lot of cogs turning in my brain that don't get on paper, but for this case in particular, those were kind of the things that I did. What are all the ways I can cook the corn? What are all the ways I can break it down? What are all the ways I can incorporate it in the cheesecake? Do I want pieces of corn in there? Do I just want a puree? Do I want it to be smooth or I think about so many things. But for this one in particular, I went through all of that recipe and development to really put out something that I was really proud of, that everybody that tried it really enjoyed it, and that made me so happy. I had 2 people come back the next week, and they were like, "You don't have the sweet corn cheesecake this week?" I was like, "No. No, my flavors change every week. I'm so sorry." "Well, could we order it again?" "Absolutely, you could. Just message me. I would be more than happy to make you another one." And those are the kind of things that make those long R&D processes absolutely worth it for me. So
So I'm so curious in talking to creators about that process that you just went through. How do you know when you reach the finish line? Because you do so much R&D, so much trial and error. I can't imagine how many variations of this sweet corn cheesecake you tried. How do you know when you get to that spot where it's like, yes, this is it? Like, what's that eureka moment?
so this is gonna sound really cheesy, but I mean it. I'm never done with putting some I'm never done with something I just get to a point where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yay, I'm so happy with this and this is great." And I'll put it out, but my brain will always go to, "How can I make it better?"
Yeah.
Because that's just how I am. So, and I would not change that for anything because again, it pushes me and that thought process motivates me a lot. But really, the true answer is when I get to try it and I'm happy with it, that's when it will go out because I don't want to put something out that I'm not proud of. I am not, nor have I ever been a salesman, but man, can I get real amped about the things that I make. And then it's just easy because then you're just having a conversation about something that you love instead of trying to convince somebody to try your stuff.
Hmm.
So,
I went back and I found an Instagram post that you put up a couple years ago. And you said at age 18, while you were in culinary school, you had a dream that you would have a farm to table restaurant. Now, obviously, that's not exactly where you ended up, but you have your own business now. And you mentioned it right off the bat. You were like, one of my favorite things about this is getting to work with local producers and incorporating as much local as possible. That's farm to table. Maybe it's not table necessarily in terms of like putting it in front of a
right.
customer, but that's essentially it. Like when you look back, I mean, a lot of us make dreams at age 18. I thought I was going to play in the NBA. Yeah,
Absolutely.
didn't quite get close, but yours was relatively close. Like what inspired that dream and how did you see it evolve over the years?
So, I was, you can call it fortunate or unfortunate, but I was pretty naive to most culinary things all the way up until I was in culinary school. Like almost everything. My parents didn't cook hardly at all. I was very happy when my stepdad came into the picture because he's a phenomenal chef. I mean, he worked here in Omaha at the French Cafe when it was still open.
Oh
He's
wow.
worked at places in Pennsylvania and Kansas City and in Las Vegas and Phoenix. I mean, he's just done an incredible amount of stuff. And for me, him cooking for me was so eye opening. I was like, I want to learn more about food. I didn't know food could taste like this. This is incredible. So, fast forward to going to culinary school, I loved the idea of learning again because I knew nothing about it, about learning from the start of where your food comes from all the way until the end process of getting to cook it and put it on a plate for people. Because everything in between there is essential. Growing it all the way to cooking it is all essential for you. So why would you not learn more about it? So at the time when I was 18, I thought 100% I was going to go to culinary school and then I was going to go learn about horticulture immediately after that. So that way I could learn about the full cycle and everything, which is kind of where that dream came from. I also am a big lover of animals, amongst other things. So to have a farm to table restaurant was very exciting, and I love being a host. So being hospitable to people at my abode seemed like a wonderful idea. I did end up going back and learning about horticulture and getting another degree, but it wasn't until a few years later, and I was happy because I had more insight at
Mm,
that point. So it was nice because my thought process was, "Oh my gosh, you could utilize this in A through Z way," which, you know, I don't know about everybody else, but when I graduated culinary school, I was like, "That's it. I learned all of the things. I'm set," which was 100% not true. And I'm so happy that that's the case because it's challenging, but again, it motivates me. So that's great. I still have this dream. It's in the works of the future. It would just look a little bit different than I think what I had initially anticipated, but it'll be putting pastries and baked goods and quiches and wonderful things like that out in a similar way. I found that when I did the baking and I could still incorporate local ingredients into it, the passion didn't change. I always thought that I couldn't do that with baking, so I was so fixated on on opening a restaurant that was savory cooking. And it was so fulfilling when I got to start working with farm table delivery, when I got to start working with, other cheese producers and flour producers and fruit producers. I mean, this was, oh my gosh, this was everything that I wanted, and I can have it doing what I'm doing right now, and I get to be creative, and I get to be the one that puts this up. Oh my gosh, this is great. So I look at that and I think back to my 18-year-old self, and I'm like, she would be so happy to know that this is what we're working towards now. Like, it'll make me teary because it's an emotional thing, to get to sit here and finally, I'm 32 now, to have the confidence to go forward and live out my dream. I thought I was gonna be with Guggenheimer for forever. I loved my job. I loved my bosses. I loved my employees and all the people that I got to work with and the clients there, and it was awesome. But this was so fulfilling for me because it was mine. And then it meant that I could do this, and this is what I always wanted. So, it's great.
And I want to touch on that because this was not an easy decision for you.
No.
You worked for Guggenheimer for 11 years.
Yep.
You were the sous chef there when you left. So, I mean, high up at, I'm correct in saying that, right?
Yeah, I ran the titles there are a little different, but
Okay.
I ran my own kitchen. So as
Gotcha.
an executive sous chef, I got to run my own kitchen and have employees, and it was great. My executive chef just worked in another building where my husband works.
There you
So
go.
there you go.
Uh, but to go back on that, like you were happy and you were
Yeah.
stable.
Yeah.
But on May 13th, you posted on your Instagram page, and this was on your personal page, not Breeze's, but you said, I've given this a lot of thought. And the reality is, I had two choices: continuing living the stable corporate life or go after my dreams. It's really hard to
Yeah,
take
it's
that second path. I mean, that is a leap of faith to potentially leave, a salary and benefits and vacation time and just the stability, but to say, this is what I know I was put on this earth to do. I have to go for it. How hard was it to make that decision, and how did you ultimately come to peace with it?
so gosh, that's a really good question. And honestly, one that a lot of people had asked me in a different way up until that point. I think my humorously, my managers there knew way before I did that this was going to be a thing. I was very fortunate in the sense that everybody there was so supportive of me and the things that I did that I don't think they ever looked at it as anything other than it's going to be a real bummer when we lose her to this. Which I fought it for so long. I was like, no, I'm not gonna leave. Like, I love it here. I love you guys. Like, why would I go and do that if I can do both? Because I've been doing both for so long now. When it gets to a point where I was saying the thing that hit home for me was the fact that I was having to say no to things that I really wanted to do because of time constraints or because I didn't have it would be during the time that I would be at work when I would need to deal with things and I couldn't because I was spending my time and my energy doing another job. And I think the thing that ended up hitting home for me was at the end of the day, everything that I did for Breeze, I was getting to do for myself and for my family. Everything that I was doing at Guggenheimer, while I was doing it for people that I really enjoyed being around, was not for me. It was always for somebody else. I was never gonna see the direct benefit from that outside of the, "Oh my gosh, I made this great beef bourguignon today, guys. I hope you really like it." And I would get the feedback from them that they did, but at the end of the day, that was it, and I just got a paycheck and that was all. Humorously enough, just a slight backstory, I was originally brought over to Guggenheimer to be their horticulture, like,
Oh,
specialist
really?
and get on board, get other local folks on board with delivering things to Guggenheimer. So the evolution of that really happened during COVID when I moved fully into the kitchen and then wasn't really doing anything with outside folks. But that was great because I had built all these relationships with all these people that now I get to still have relationships with for Breeze. So it's been real cool and mutually beneficial. But at the end of the day, when I wanted to say yes to more things and really realized how fulfilling it was for me to get to do these things for my own business, I was like, yeah, it's going to be hard, but and it's going to be a fight, but at the end of every day, you get to do this for you. And then you get to work towards all of the other dreams and goals that you have that I now get to build around my life, which I really didn't have there for a second. I love my husband so much. He was so supportive. We got engaged and married during this time where I was working both jobs. And we both knew it was going to be hard. And he's like, it's totally going to be worth it. It's fine. He never doubted me for a single second. So then when I left to go do this, now we spend so much more time together. It's very exciting.
So now that you've been doing this full time for a few months, just what has it been like? I mean, you're your own boss now. I'm sure you're getting more time to experiment with the unusual flavors. Are you just have more time to say yes to events. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to turn as much stuff down. And I think you can probably think about the future and what you want Breeze to become a little bit more than you could before, where it was just like execute, execute, execute. What has it been like for you these last couple? Well, I was gonna say months. It hasn't even been months yet. It's been
No,
like
not
what,
yet.
6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah. I love that my business finally gets to have an identity because I get to say yes and no to what I want to instead of what I have to, if that makes sense. So that's been a really it's been so cool to get to be a part of. By the way, I've said no to very little because the reality is I've got the most awesome people around me and get to be a part of all these amazing things and have slowly but surely developed this identity where I get to work with local producers and all this fun stuff. But when I get to communicate more with people really because that's one of the things that has changed immeasurably is that I get to go to my vendors more and talk to their customers more. They get to put faces to names and products, whereas before I was just kind of dropping it and leaving like, sorry guys, I gotta go. I gotta go on to the next thing. And I think that more depth of connection was something that I was really missing in things with the business outside of the farmers market because I absolutely love talking to people in a depthful way with things that I'm passionate about. And one of
I
those
can
things
tell
was the
you're very good
business.
at it.
So so yeah.
So, like, what has it been like to have those conversations and to be able to slow down and develop relationships more than just so? To me, what I'm hearing you say is you're not only delivering people a cheesecake now or a cake now, but you're delivering them an experience. You're getting to show them Brie,
Yeah.
not just Brie's food.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think gosh, I'm trying to find the right words for it. My business gets to be a lot more intentional now. What you said with the execute, 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 that's what it was. And I was happy with the things that I was putting out and I was happy with the things that I was able to offer to people, but it felt like such a surface thing because it was all me and it was drop and go and it was really quick and that was it. But now I'm able to put more intention because I have more time to make social media posts and do events and spend time at those events and spend more time on my product and developing relationships with with these local producers and with my customers and all the rest. I never wanted it to be a surface interaction, or the amount of times that I would say, "Oh man, yeah, I mean, yeah, I really wish I could do that. I just don't have the time." I don't find myself saying that hardly at all anymore. Now, if I want to do something that elevates myself and my business or an event or a product, I just get to do it. And that's great. And I get to prioritize it and it gets done. And that's awesome. That's awesome. Because again, at the end of the day, it's my customers will see the direct benefit from me having more time, which is so exciting in product and in me being there and getting to have relationships with them. So
I wanted to ask you about Omaha's dessert community because I thought it was so cool. Going back to your social media, I saw at your wedding, the dessert was actually supplied by the Bubbly Tart,
absolutely it
which is
was.
another bakery in town. The
Yes.
party favors were supplied by Nibs Chocolate,
Yep.
which is another Omaha creator, Lindy Pearson, amazing person. Those are different products, but technically they could be seen as your competitors because they're all offering dessert. And if I have a slice of cake from the bubbly tart, I'm probably not going to have a slice of your cheesecake the same day. Now, some people might argue with that. My wife might be one of them, but I, I think that it's so cool that you guys don't see it that way. That it's more so like the rising tide lifts all boats. What has it been like becoming, especially this last year and a half, as Breeze has really taken off, becoming a prominent part of this Omaha dessert scene?
So I'm going to start with something and then I'm going to end with actually answering your question, because I am going to shout out Chelsea at the Bubbly Tart because she has been amazing in terms of supporting my business. I loved their stuff.
Oh, it's incredible.
Like I thought it was amazing. And then when I finally got to meet her in person, I don't think I fangirled out loud as much as I did internally, because I was like, I just think you're amazing. But she was literally the first person to be like, I will teach you. Like, I know that this is a self taught thing. You can come here. I'll teach you how to do stuff. I've been going to the cake decorating classes there because I want to be better at decorating cakes, because my Lord, I need so much help. And but it's
cover
gotten
it
a
in
lot better.
more Reese's peanut butter
Yeah,
cups.
and
Yeah,
peanut butter cups. Yeah,
just put a mountain
absolutely.
of those on there.
So she has been so great at being one of the people that shows how supportive our community is, because her stuff is fantastic and she doesn't have to do that, and she didn't have to do it, but she does. And she shares my posts and she buys my product. Like,
That's awesome.
she's just amazing. Lindy, also amazing. Lindy has come and been my employee at a bunch of different events and stuff. I think at the end of the day, I cannot. Even if I tried my very hardest, I can't feed everybody. I would love to, because that would make me so happy if I got the opportunity to do that, but I can't. And so why not build up the people around me that have been supportive of me, of my stuff, that are just kind people. Like, if you are a kind person, I'm in your corner 46,000%. And at the end of the day, cuz like the bubbly tart serves cheesecake, right? So at the end of the day, if somebody is like, I would rather get one from them, great. That is absolutely subjective, because there's a million places that you can get it. And if you can support her, that's I love that. I absolutely love that you're doing that. I don't think it takes anything away from me, just because we're two different businesses, or with the baking scene in Omaha, we're all different businesses. We all offer different things. We all have our favorite customers and all the rest, and we all service different parts of the metro area. And I would never me myself, I would never see it as getting business taken away from me because they're going to support somebody else that absolutely deserves it.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Last question. You teased it earlier, and I know, this This is a new full-time venture. I'm sure you have big plans for Breeze, and some of them might not be fully formed and you can't or don't feel comfortable discussing them yet. But from what you do feel comfortable discussing, when you look at the future of Breeze, what do you see for your bakery?
So it's very exciting to know that because I have done this, it means that there are potentially going to be other doors that get to open that end up leading to the place that I want to be. Right now, I am looking for property. So everybody that asks me all the time, and if you haven't heard of me before, then you wouldn't have asked me before. But people ask all the time, are you going to end up having a standalone bakery? Do you have, a permanent spot? And right now I get to be at Kitchen Council, and that's amazing.
Shout out Kitchen Council.
Gosh,
Yeah.
shout out Kitchen Council. They're awesome. But eventually I'm going to find land and I will build a little bed and breakfast there. And then I'll be able to offer dessert and breakfast and coffee and all that to the public, which would be exciting. But if you stay in the hopefully wonderful Victorian farmhouse that we find, if you stay there, then you'll get to eat at the breakfast area for free, which would be very exciting. And then I'll get to have my land with all my products on it that I would then get to use for my stuff and have animals. I've got 9 currently. I've got 5 chickens and 2 dogs and 2 cats, but I
Two
would
adorable corgis.
Yeah, my corgis are pretty
You love your
stinking
corgis.
cute. I do love my corgis very much. But then we'd have, goats and ducks and maybe some other things, but I've gotten the opportunity to work on a lot of farms. I've gotten the opportunity to see a lot of pieces of the puzzle that is inevitably going to be created for my business. So I'm really lucky because I get to take the things that I like about all of these things and then be able to create something totally different and get to offer that for a very unique experience around this area. And it's one of the reasons why I think Long Walk Farm is one of the coolest places that I have ever been, because I think they do that incredibly well, to be able to host people there and have chefs and have food, and you get to look at the gardens right behind you and you get to go and see the ducks and the goats and the pigs and all that. And getting asked to be a part of that event was truly like a dream come true for me because of the things that I want in the future of my life. So to see somebody else being so successful with lots of pieces of that was like, oh my gosh, this is so
This could
cool.
be
You
it,
guys are
yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So getting to see it is like, this is a thing. This is an actual reality that can happen. And look at these people. They're kicking butt and doing great things out there. So
Well, that sounds magical for 2 reasons. One, I mean, it's so cool to see all these different parts of your life, being a savory chef, your experience in horticulture and local producers, local products, your baking prowess, all your love of animals, all this coming together into one thing sounds awesome. And B, it just sounds like a fantastic experience. And if this ever happens, you can put my wife and I down for a reservation today.
I love it.
I will be there, and I
love it.
cannot wait to
That's
have some
awesome.
cheesecake at night and then a quiche in the morning. Sounds delicious. People, there's one way for me to sum up this woman's baking. I don't like cheesecake. Most cheesecake. I've had a few cheesecakes that I've liked, but for the most part, I don't like the consistency. I don't really like the tang of it. I will eat anything that she makes because her cheesecakes are that good. Whether you want to do one of the unusual ones or you want to stick to just, a normal berry or chocolate, whatever, she can make a great one. And it sounds like big things are on the horizon. So follow Bree's Bakery on Facebook and Instagram. You can stay up to date with everything that Bree's got going. Bree, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today. This was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you again so much for having me. I had a great time.
Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.